Okay, so today we're going to talk about pattern 7, and hopefully, if we have time, also pattern 8. Depends on how much explaining I need to do here. So, a quick review about the kinds of verbs that you are dealing with as you diagram. So, when you were dealing with patterns 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so 1 through 5, you're dealing with linking verbs. Linking verbs have transitive properties in the sense that it links the subject to the predicate. So if you say, the car is green, the linking verb is, which is specifically a to be verb, links the word car to the predicate adjective, which is green. Predicate adjective is just a fancy way to say that the adjective is in the predicate of the sentence. Pattern 6, and only pattern 6, deals with intransitive verbs. There is no transfer or linking of any kind. The action can stop at the verb. He rested. She stopped. The dog ran. You don't technically need more information in order to make sense. Alright, so patterns 7 through 10 are going to deal with transitive verbs. Transitive verbs are anything that transfer actions. We enjoyed the game. Alright? So if you say, we enjoyed, and then you just stop, the audience is going, you enjoyed what? This is why transitive verbs have a direct object. The direct object is generically defined as whatever receives the action. He threw the ball. The ball received the action of throwing. Obviously, in the example of we enjoyed the game, though, the game didn't technically receive an action. So this particular definition doesn't really catch at all. It's just a very basic generic definition. Because you need to keep in mind that there's still some kind of direct object. So the direct object is dealt with in sentence 7, or pattern 7, I mean. The indirect object is what we deal with in pattern 8. So the indirect object receives the object, as in this object. The students gave their professor their homework. Direct object, homework, that's what you're handing in. Who receives the object? The professor does, so the professor is the indirect object. The acting agent is the student. So, the student gives the professor the homework. And I'll diagram that one for you shortly. But we need to start with pattern 7. Okay. Pattern 7. Alright, so let's start with an example. The students organized a rally. Okay? Alright, so again, we can tell it's a transitive verb because if we just stop here, the audience is left waiting. The students organized. What? They organized what? They organized a rally. Okay. So let's mark what we have in our sentence. We have students. This is your noun phrase in P1. You have students organized. Here's your verb. What did they organize? Notice that a direct object answers the question what. What did they organize? Direct object, also in P2, a rally. So this is still a noun. That's why it says noun phrase 2. You have 2 nouns in this sentence. This one's a subject, so it gets underlined. We can also say noun. And then we have the determiners, the and a. So this is when MP1 does not equal MP1, such as my professor is Dr. Wright. You now have 2 different nouns in your sentence. This is what pattern 7 is for. Alright, so let's diagram this. Again, your core sentence, always stop and identify that. Students organized. Don't forget your determiner, the. Alright, unlike pattern 2 and pattern 3, pattern 4 and 5, it's no longer a slanted line. You have to indicate it's a direct object by putting a straight line. That's what tells the difference between pattern 7, for example, and pattern 3 or pattern 5. Two things do. One, what kind of verb you have, and two, the straight up and down line now. Do not let this line bisect. This is the only one that goes all the way through. It has to stop here, just like the slanted line. Again, do not forget your determiner, A. These students organize a rally. Very straightforward. Your textbook points out that there's one exception, one kind of exception, to the rule that it's always for pattern 7, NP1 to NP2. But that exception is when you're using a reciprocal pronoun. You're going, oh, what? Okay. John cut himself. Himself is a reciprocal pronoun. So if you say himself, herself, themselves, ourselves, you still have a transitive verb. This is still a transitive verb. John cut. John cut what? The instant you ask that question, you have a direct object. Is it still your direct object? Subject is still John. So you are still pattern 7, even though, technically, you got an NP1 and an NP1 because you're saying John cut himself. So this kind of pronoun is going to create the only exception in which there would be an NP1 at the end of the sentence. And this is how you would diagram that. Okay. Let's see if we can talk about pattern 8 then. Trying to make sure these videos don't get too long for you guys. So the students gave the professor their homework. Your main sentence, students gave. There's your core. All right. Students gave the students. Again, don't forget your determiner. What did they give? They gave homework. This is your direct object. Again, straight up and down line. Who did they give it to? They gave it to their professor. Notice that there is no preposition on this line. The understood preposition of the sentence is actually to. The students gave to their professor their homework is another way you could say the same sentence. So in a sense, you actually have an understood to here. But professor is a noun, so it must go on a horizontal line. So yes, you will have sentences that have a line with nothing written on it as a result of this phenomenon. And the, please don't forget your determiner. Homework, it is their homework. Again, don't forget your determiner. These students gave the professor their homework. So your indirect object, direct object is down here. The professor is the recipient of the homework, indirect object. Direct object, what you're handing in, the homework. All right, that's pattern 8. Again, if this is confusing, just contact me, tell me, and I will help you further, as always.